Thunder cracked across Manhattan's skyline while rain hammered the emergency bay doors of Metropolitan Crown Hospital. Inside Trauma 3, Dr. Scarlett Vale, cardiac surgeon, single mother, survivor, stood over a dying man whose face she thought she'd never see again. 7 years ago, Luca Moretti proposed to her in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Then he vanished without a word, leaving her pregnant and alone. Now the infamous Mafia Boss lay bleeding out on her operating table, bullets lodged near his heart, while their daughter, the child he never knew existed, slept peacefully 20 blocks away. Scarlett had two choices: let the past die with him, or save the man who destroyed her life. Her hands were already moving. Some scars run too deep to ever stop bleeding. If you're watching from New York, Chicago, London, or anywhere else in the world, drop a like and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all began. The storm hit Manhattan like a fist. Rain slammed against the windows of Metropolitan Crown Hospital's trauma wing, while lightning turned the East River silver for half seconds at a time. Inside the staff lounge on the 4th floor, Dr. Scarlett Vale stood motionless in front of the coffee machine, staring at the cup in her hand like she'd forgotten what it was for. Her surgical scrubs were clean. Her dark hair was tied back tight. Her hands were steady. Everything about her screamed control. Everything except the exhaustion carved into the shadows beneath her eyes. Scarlett. She turned. Dr. Angela Chen stood in the doorway, tablet pressed against her chest, expression unreadable. Angela had been Scarlett's attending physician during her residency 6 years ago. Now they worked side by side in the cardiothoracic unit, and Angela knew better than anyone when Scarlett was running on fumes. "You've been on for 16 hours, Angela said quietly. "Go home." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You've got a 7-year-old daughter who probably hasn't seen you awake in 3 days. Scarlett's jaw tightened. "Elena's with my neighbor. She's fine." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Ang?" Angela exhaled slowly. "The point is you're burning yourself out, and one of these days you're going to collapse in the middle of a surgery and kill someone." She paused. "Or yourself." Scarlett didn't answer. She just turned back toward the coffee machine and pressed the button again. The cup filled with something dark and bitter that barely resembled coffee, but it was hot, and it would keep her awake for another few hours. That was all that mattered. Angela stepped closer. "Scarlett, listen to me. You don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. You made it. You're one of the best cardiac surgeons on the East Coast. You've got a beautiful daughter. You've survived everything life threw at you. So why do you keep acting like you're still running from something?" Scarlett's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. Because she was. She'd been running for 7 years. Ever since the night Luca Moretti walked out of her life without a word and left her alone with a pregnancy test in a Brooklyn apartment that smelled like mold and broken dreams. But Angela didn't need to know that. Nobody did. "I'm fine," Scarlett said again. "I just need to finish my shift." Angela opened her mouth to argue. Then her pager went off. She glanced down at the screen, and her expression changed instantly. Trauma alert, GSW to the chest. Multiple victims. ETA 3 minutes. Scarlett was already moving. She shoved the coffee cup onto the counter and pushed past Angela into the hallway. Her exhaustion evaporated the moment adrenaline hit her bloodstream. This was what she was good at. This was what made sense. Inside an operating room, everything had rules, protocols, outcomes you could control if you were fast enough and precise enough and didn't let your hands shake. Out in the real world, nothing made sense. But in here, she was God. She sprinted down the hallway toward the trauma bay, her sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floor. Around her, the hospital erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses rushed past with crash carts. Residents shouted orders into their radios. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed as ambulances screamed toward the emergency entrance. Scarlett pushed through the double doors into Trauma Bay 3 and immediately started scrubbing in at the sink. Her mind shifted into autopilot. Hands under scalding water, soap up to the elbows, 30 seconds of mechanical precision while her brain prepared for whatever was coming through those doors. Gunshot wound to the chest. Multiple victims. That meant gang violence. Drug deals gone wrong. Maybe a robbery. Maybe a turf war between crews fighting over Brooklyn or Queens or the Bronx. It didn't matter. All that mattered was keeping whoever came through those doors alive long enough to wheel them into surgery. Behind her, the trauma team assembled like soldiers preparing for battle. Angela moved into position at the head of the table. 2 surgical residents flanked the sides. A trauma nurse prepped the defibrillator. Another nurse laid out rows of surgical instruments with the kind of speed that only came from years of practice. Scarlett pulled on her gloves and turned toward the bay doors just as they exploded open. Paramedics stormed inside, pushing a gurney at full speed. Blood soaked through the white sheets covering the patient's chest. One paramedic pressed both hands against a compress, trying to slow the bleeding, while another squeezed an ambu bag to force air into the patient's collapsing lungs. Male, mid-30s, multiple gunshot wounds to the torso, the lead paramedic shouted. BP 70 over 40 and dropping, pulse thready, lost consciousness en route. They slammed the gurney against the operating table, and the trauma team moved as one unit. Angela grabbed the patient's head to stabilize the airway. The residents cut away the blood-soaked clothing. Nurses started IV lines in both arms. Scarlett stepped forward to assess the damage. And then she saw his face. The air vanished from her lungs. Time fractured into broken glass. Everything around her, the shouting voices, the screaming alarms, the chaos, all of it collapsed into silence. Because the man dying on her operating table was Luca Moretti, the man who proposed to her 7 years ago beneath the stars on a private rooftop in Manhattan. The man who promised her forever and then disappeared like smoke. The man who never knew he had a daughter. For 3 seconds, Scarlett couldn't move. Couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her brain screamed at her to run, to let someone else take over, to get as far away from this man as possible before the past ripped her apart all over again, but her hands were already reaching for the scalpel. "Scarlett?" Angela's voice cut through the fog. "You good?" Scarlett forced herself to nod. "I'm good." Liar. She wasn't good. She was drowning. But she'd spent 7 years learning how to drown without letting anyone see it. So she shoved the emotions down into the same dark hole where she'd buried everything else and focused on the only thing that mattered right now, keeping Luca Moretti alive. Even if she hated him, even if seeing his face made her want to scream, even if every instinct in her body told her to walk away and let him bleed out on this table, the same way he'd let her bleed out emotionally 7 years ago. She couldn't, because despite everything, despite the abandonment, despite the lies, despite the years of silence, she still wasn't the kind of person who let people die, even the ones who deserved it. "Talk to me," Scarlett said, her voice cold and steady. "What are we looking at?" One of the residents pressed a stethoscope against Luca's chest. Breath sounds absent on the left side. Possible hemothorax. "Get me a chest tube, now." The nurse slapped the instrument into her hand. Scarlett didn't hesitate. She made a precise incision between Luca's ribs and inserted the tube in one smooth motion. Dark blood gushed out immediately, filling the collection chamber. "Hemothorax confirmed," Scarlett said. "He's bleeding into his chest cavity. We need to get him into surgery before he exsanguinates." Angela nodded. "OR2 is prepped and ready." "Then let's move." They transferred Luca onto a clean gurney and sprinted toward the operating theater. Scarlett ran beside him, one hand pressed against his chest to monitor his breathing, her mind racing through 1,000 calculations at once. Bullet trajectory, organ damage, blood loss, survival probability. She couldn't afford to think about anything else. Couldn't afford to remember the way Luca used to smile at her, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Couldn't afford to remember the way his hands felt when he held her face and whispered promises about the life they were going to build together. Couldn't afford to remember the morning she woke up alone in their apartment with nothing but a note that said, "I'm sorry," an engagement ring that she eventually sold to pay for medical school. None of that mattered anymore. All that mattered was the surgery. They burst through the doors into OR2. The surgical team was already waiting. Scrub nurses, anesthesiologist, perfusionist standing by in case they needed to put Luca on bypass. Scarlett moved into position at the head of the table, while Angela intubated him and the anesthesiologist pushed drugs to keep him under. "Scalpel," Scarlett said. The nurse placed the blade in her hand. Scarlett took one breath. Then she cut. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of blood and precision. Luca's chest cavity was a disaster. 2 bullets had penetrated his left lung, causing it to collapse. Another had shattered 2 ribs and lodged dangerously close to his heart. The 4th bullet had nicked his descending aorta, causing a slow leak that would have killed him in minutes if they hadn't gotten him into surgery when they did. Scarlett worked with the kind of cold focus that made her one of the best cardiac surgeons on the East Coast. Her hands moved like machines, cutting, clamping, suturing, cauterizing. She didn't think, didn't feel, just operated. But every time she looked down at Luca's face, something cracked inside her chest. He looked older, harder. There were scars on his body that hadn't been there 7 years ago. Burn marks on his shoulder, a jagged knife wound across his ribs, evidence of a life spent in violence and darkness. What the hell happened to you, Luca? She didn't say it out loud, didn't let herself wonder, just kept working. Bleeding's under control, Angela said from across the table. Lungs reinflated, vitals stabilizing. Good, let's close them up. They stitched Luca back together layer by layer, muscle, fascia, skin. By the time Scarlett tied off the final suture, her hands were trembling from exhaustion, but her face remained perfectly calm. She stepped back from the table and stripped off her gloves. He's stable, she said quietly. Move him to the ICU. I want round-the-clock monitoring. If anything changes, page me immediately. Angela nodded. You did good, Scarlett. Scarlett didn't answer. She just turned and walked out of the operating room before anyone could see the cracks forming in her armor. The ICU waiting room was empty. Scarlett collapsed into one of the plastic chairs and pressed her hands against her face. Her scrubs were soaked with blood, Luca's blood, and the smell of it made her stomach turn. She'd saved him. She'd actually saved him. The man who destroyed her life was alive because of her, and she didn't know whether to laugh or scream. Her pager buzzed. She glanced down at the screen. ICU, patient awake. Scarlett's heart stopped. No, it was too soon. Luca shouldn't be awake yet. The anesthesia alone should have kept him under for at least another few hours, but apparently the Mafia Boss was just as stubborn unconscious as he'd been when they were together. She stood slowly and walked toward the ICU like she was walking toward her own execution. The hallway felt longer than it should have been. Each step echoed too loud. By the time she reached Luca's room, her pulse was hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She stopped outside the door, took one breath, then pushed it open. Luca was awake. He lay in the hospital bed surrounded by machines and IV lines, his chest wrapped in bandages, his face pale but alert. The moment Scarlett stepped into the room, his eyes locked onto hers, and for 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Scarlett. Her name sounded different in his voice, rougher, broken, like he'd spent 7 years screaming it into the void and finally found her again. Scarlett's hands curled into fists at her sides. You shouldn't be awake yet. Yeah, well, Luca's voice was hoarse from the breathing tube. Dying's easier than facing you. Don't. Don't what? Don't try to be charming. Don't try to make jokes. Don't act like we're old friends catching up. Scarlett's voice was ice. You don't get to do that? Luca exhaled slowly. I know. Do you? Scarlett, you left. The words ripped out of her before she could stop them. You proposed to me. You told me you loved me. You told me we were going to build a life together. And then you vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. Nothing. Her voice cracked. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Luca's jaw tightened. I had to. You had to? Scarlett laughed bitterly. You had to break my heart and disappear? You had to leave me alone and pregnant and terrified? The word pregnant hit Luca like a bullet. His entire body went rigid, his face drained of color. What? Scarlett froze. Shit. She hadn't meant to say it, hadn't meant to tell him like this. But the damage was done. Luca stared at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Shock, disbelief, horror, all of it crashing together at once. You were pregnant, he whispered. Scarlett didn't answer. Scarlett, answer me. Were you pregnant? Yes. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Luca closed his eyes. Where's the baby? She's not a baby anymore. She's 7. Luca's eyes snapped open. 7. The same amount of time he'd been gone. I have a daughter, he said slowly, like he was testing the words to see if they were real. I have a daughter, Scarlett corrected. You have nothing. Scarlett, don't say my name like that. Like what? Like you still have the right to care. Luca flinched, but he didn't look away. What's her name? Scarlett hesitated. She shouldn't tell him. She should walk out of this room right now and never look back. But something in Luca's expression stopped her. Something raw and desperate and utterly destroyed. Elena, she said quietly. Her name is Elena. Luca's breath hitched. She looks like you, Scarlett continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Same eyes, same stubborn chin, same way of tilting her head when she's thinking too hard about something. A single tear slid down Luca's face. Scarlett had never seen him cry before. Not once. Not even when his father died. But now the infamous Mafia Boss, the man who'd built an empire on fear and violence, was falling apart in a hospital bed because he'd just learned he had a daughter he'd never met. I'm sorry, Luca whispered. Sorry doesn't fix this. I know. Sorry doesn't give her back the father she never had. I know. Sorry doesn't. I know. Luca's voice cracked. I know, Scarlett. I know I destroyed everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I don't deserve to even be in the same room as you, but I need you to understand something. I don't want to understand. I left to protect you. Scarlett laughed bitterly. That's the oldest lie in the book. It's not a lie. Then prove it. Luca exhaled slowly. There was a war. Inside the family. I tried to shut down the trafficking operations, the weapons deals, the drugs, the things my father built that I wanted to destroy, but my underboss found out. He threatened you, sent me photos of you walking to work, sleeping in your apartment, evidence that he could reach you whenever he wanted. Luca's voice turned ragged. He told me if I didn't disappear, he'd kill you. So I left. I staged my own death, went underground, and spent the last 7 years hunting every single person who threatened you. Scarlett stared at him. She wanted to call him a liar, wanted to scream at him for thinking she was stupid enough to believe this story. But the look in his eyes told her it was true. Every word. You should have told me, she whispered. I couldn't risk it. You should have trusted me. I did trust you. That's why I left. Because I knew if you were in danger, I wouldn't be able to think straight. I'd make mistakes, and those mistakes would have gotten you killed. Luca's voice broke. So I chose to lose you instead. I thought it was the only way to keep you alive. Scarlett's hands trembled. 7 years. 7 years of hating him. 7 years of believing he'd abandoned her because she wasn't good enough. 7 years of raising their daughter alone while he was out there fighting a war she didn't even know existed. And now he was lying in a hospital bed telling her he'd done it all to protect her. I don't know what to do with this, Scarlett said quietly. You don't have to do anything. Yes, I do, because you just dropped a bomb in the middle of my life, and now I have to figure out how to explain to our daughter that the father she never met is alive and bleeding out in a hospital bed 20 floors above her bedroom. Luca's expression shattered. She doesn't know about me. What was I supposed to tell her? That her father was a mafia boss who disappeared before she was born? That he chose his empire over us? I know that now, but I didn't know it then. All I knew was that you were gone, and I was alone, and I had to survive. Luca closed his eyes. I'm sorry. Stop saying that. What else am I supposed to say? Nothing. Scarlett turned toward the door. There's nothing you can say that will fix this. Scarlett, wait. She stopped, but didn't turn around. Can I meet her? Luca's voice was barely a whisper. Please, just one once. I don't care if she hates me. I don't care if she never wants to see me again. I just need to see her. Just once. Scarlett's throat tightened. She should say no. Should protect Elena from this man and his world and everything that came with it. But when she turned around and saw the desperation in Luca's eyes, the same desperation she'd felt every time Elena asked why she didn't have a father like the other kids, she couldn't. I'll think about it, Scarlett said quietly. Then she walked out before she could change her mind. Scarlett didn't go home. She couldn't. Not yet. Instead, She walked to the hospital chapel on the second floor and sat in the back row staring at the empty space where an altar should have been. The room was quiet, peaceful, the kind of place people came when they needed to think, or when they needed to fall apart without anyone watching. Scarlett pressed her hands against her face and let the tears come. 7 years. 7 years of building walls around her heart to protect herself from the pain of losing Luca. And now those walls were crumbling, and she didn't know how to stop it. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out and saw a text from her neighbor, Mrs. Chen. "Elena's asking when you're coming home. Should I tell her you're working late again?" Scarlett stared at the message. Elena, her daughter. The only good thing that had come out of the wreckage of her relationship with Luca. And now Luca wanted to meet her. Scarlett closed her eyes. What the hell was she supposed to do? Before she could answer, her pager went off again. ICU, code blue. Scarlett's heart stopped. She sprinted out of the chapel and down the hallway toward the ICU, her mind racing through 1,000 worst-case scenarios. Luca. Something had gone wrong. She burst through the doors into his room and found the trauma team already surrounding his bed. Alarms screamed. Monitors flatlined. Angela was performing chest compressions while a nurse prepared the defibrillator. "What happened?" Scarlett shouted. "He crashed," Angela said, between compressions. "VFib, we're trying to shock him back." Scarlett shoved her way to the table. "How many rounds?" "This is the third. Charged to 200. The nurse hit the button. "Charged. Clear!" Luca's body jerked as electricity slammed through his chest. Nothing. The monitor stayed flat. Again. 250. Charged. Clear. Another shock. Still nothing. Scarlett's hands started to shake. No, not like this. She hadn't saved him just to lose him an hour later. Again, she said. 300. "Scarlett?" Angela started. "Do it!" The nurse charged the paddles to maximum. "Charged!" Scarlett pressed her hand against Luca's chest one last time. "Don't you dare die on me," she whispered. Then she stepped back. "Clear!" The shock hit. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, beep, beep, beep. The monitor came back to life. Luca's heart was beating again. Scarlett exhaled and stumbled backward, her legs almost giving out beneath her. Angela caught her. "You okay?" Scarlett nodded, but she wasn't okay. She wasn't even close. Because she'd just realized something terrifying, despite everything Luca had done. Despite the lies and the pain and the years of abandonment, she still wasn't ready to let him go. And that scared her more than anything. Scarlett didn't leave the hospital that night. She told herself it was because she needed to monitor Luca's condition, that any responsible surgeon would stay close after a patient coded and nearly died on the table, that it had nothing to do with the way her hands had shaken when his heart stopped, or the crushing weight that had slammed into her chest when she thought she might lose him all over again. But she was lying to herself, and she knew it. By 3 a.m, she was sitting in the ICU break room with cold coffee and a half-eaten sandwich she couldn't remember buying. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made her skin look gray. She hadn't slept in 24 hours, hadn't changed out of her blood-stained scrubs, hadn't called Mrs. Chen to check on Elena. She was falling apart, and the worst part was that nobody could see it. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. "Mrs. Chen." Scarlett answered. "Hey." "Don't hey me." Mrs. Chen's voice was sharp despite the late hour. "Elena woke up crying an hour ago asking where you were. I told her you were saving lives, but that excuse is getting old, Scarlett." Guilt twisted in Scarlett's stomach. "I know. I'm sorry. I'll be home soon." "That's what you said yesterday. And the day before that." "I know." "She needs her mother." "I know." The words came out harsher than Scarlett intended. She pressed her hand against her forehead and exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry, there's a complicated case, and I can't leave yet." Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment. "Is this about that man they brought in last night?" Scarlett's blood went cold. "What?" "The gunshot victim. I heard some nurses talking about it in the cafeteria. Said he was someone important. Someone dangerous." Mrs. Chen paused. "Is he the reason you're not coming home?" Scarlett's throat tightened. "It's not like that." "Then what's it like?" "It's complicated." "Everything's complicated with you, Scarlett. But your daughter isn't. She's 7 years old and she misses her mother. The words hit like a slap. Because Mrs. Chen was right. Elena deserved better than this. Deserved better than a mother who was too broken to come home. "I'll be there in an hour," Scarlett said quietly. "Good. Because if you're not, I'm bringing Elena to the hospital myself." The line went dead. Scarlett sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the phone in her hand. Then she stood, tossed the cold coffee in the trash, and walked back toward Luca's room one last time before she left. She told herself it was just to check his vitals, to make sure he was stable. But when she pushed open the door and saw him lying there in the dim light, still breathing, still alive, something inside her chest cracked open. Luca's eyes were closed. His face was pale. Monitors beeped steadily beside the bed, tracking the rhythm of a heart that had stopped beating less than 3 hours ago. Scarlett walked closer. She shouldn't be here, shouldn't care this much. But her feet kept moving until she was standing beside his bed, staring down at the man who had once been everything to her. "You don't get to do this," she whispered. "You don't get to come back into my life and make me feel things I buried 7 years ago." Luca didn't answer. Of course he didn't. He was unconscious. But Scarlett kept talking anyway. "I spent 7 years hating you, 7 years convincing myself that I was better off without you, that Elena was better off without you, and I almost believed it." Her voice cracked. "But then you showed up bleeding on my table, and everything I built to protect myself just fell apart." She reached out and brushed a strand of dark hair away from Luca's forehead. The touch was gentle, instinctive, the same way she used to touch him when they were together. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. "I don't know how to protect Elena from you. I don't know how to protect myself from you. I don't even know if I want to anymore." Her pager buzzed. She pulled back like she'd been burned and glanced at the screen. "Meet me in my office. Now. Angela." Scarlett exhaled slowly. Then she turned and walked out before she could do something stupid, like stay. Angela's office was a cramped space on the 3rd floor filled with medical journals, patient files, and empty coffee cups that had been sitting there so long they'd grown mold. Angela sat behind her desk with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "Close the door," she said. Scarlett obeyed. Angela waited until the door clicked shut before she spoke. "You want to tell me what the hell is going on?" "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play dumb with me, Scarlett. I've known you for 6 years. I've seen you perform surgery on dying patients without flinching. I've seen you work 30-hour shifts without breaking a sweat. But tonight?" Angela leaned forward. "Tonight you almost lost it in that OR. And then you stayed here all night watching over a patient who should be just another case to you." Scarlett's jaw tightened. "He's not just another case." "No shit. So who is he?" Scarlett didn't answer. Angela's eyes narrowed. "Scarlett? Who is that man?" "Someone I used to know." "Used to know? Or used to love?" The words hit harder than they should have. Scarlett turned away and stared out the window at the city lights bleeding through the rain. "It doesn't matter. Like hell it doesn't. You're emotionally compromised. You shouldn't be treating him." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're barely holding it together." "I said I'm fine." Scarlett's voice echoed through the small office. Angela didn't flinch. "If you can't be honest with me, at least be honest with yourself. That man means something to you, and whatever happened between you two, it's eating you alive." Scarlett closed her eyes. She wanted to deny it, wanted to shove the emotions back down into the dark hole where they belonged, but she was so tired of lying. "He's Elena's father," she said quietly. Angela went very still. "What?" "Luca Moretti, the man in that ICU bed. He's Elena's father." For 3 seconds, Angela didn't move. Then she stood up so fast her chair slammed against the wall. "Are you serious?" Scarlett nodded. "The same man who disappeared 7 years ago?" "Yes." "The same man who left you pregnant and alone?" "Yes." "And you're treating him?" "I didn't have a choice. He was dying." "There's always a choice, Scarlett," Angela's voice cracked. "You could have handed him off to another surgeon. You could have recused yourself. Instead, you stood over his body for 3 hours, cutting him open and putting him back together like he didn't destroy your life. Because he didn't." The words ripped out of Scarlett before she could stop them. "He left to protect me. There was a war inside his organization, and someone threatened to kill me if he didn't disappear. So he left. He gave up everything to keep me safe, and I never knew. Angela stared at her. And you believe him? I don't know. Scarlett, I don't know, okay? I want to believe him, but I also spent 7 years hating him, and I don't know how to just turn that off because he had a good reason for leaving. Angela exhaled slowly and sank back into her chair. Does Elena know? No. Are you going to tell her? I don't know. Does he want to meet her? Scarlett's throat tightened. Yes. Angela rubbed her temples. Jesus Christ, Scarlett, this is a mess. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know. You keep saying that. Because I don't have answers, Scarlett's voice broke. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to protect my daughter from a man who spent the last 7 years living in a world of violence and crime. I don't know how to explain to her that the father she's always wanted is lying in a hospital bed 20 floors above us. And I don't know how to deal with the fact that despite everything he did, I still... She stopped. Angela's expression softened. You still love him. Scarlett didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence said everything. Angela stood and walked around the desk. She placed both hands on Scarlett's shoulders and looked her straight in the eye. Listen to me. I don't know Luca Moretti. I don't know what kind of man he is or what kind of father he'll be, but I know you, and I know you've spent 7 years putting Elena first. So whatever you decide, make sure it's what's best for her. Not for him, not for you, for her. Scarlett nodded, her eyes burning with unshed tears. Now go home, Angela said gently. Get some sleep. Hug your daughter. And figure out what the hell you're going to do tomorrow. Scarlett left the office without another word. But as she walked toward the elevator, her phone buzzed again. Another text from Mrs. Chen. Elena's still awake. She says she won't sleep until you're home. Scarlett closed her eyes. Then she pressed the button for the ground floor and headed toward the exit. The apartment was dark when Scarlett walked in. She closed the door quietly and kicked off her shoes, trying not to wake anyone. But before she could take 2 steps, a small voice called out from the hallway. Mama? Scarlett's heart clenched. Elena stood in the doorway of her bedroom wearing pink pajamas with cartoon cats on them. Her dark curls were messy from sleep, and her gray eyes, Luca's eyes, were red from crying. Hey, baby, Scarlett whispered. Elena ran toward her. Scarlett caught her and lifted her up, holding her tight while Elena wrapped her arms around her neck and buried her face in Scarlett's shoulder. I missed you, Elena whispered. I missed you too, sweetheart. Why do you always have to work so late? Scarlett's throat tightened. Because there are people who need my help. But I need you too. The words broke something inside Scarlett's chest. She carried Elena to the couch and sat down, cradling her daughter in her lap the way she used to when Elena was a baby. I know, baby. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be better. Elena pulled back and looked up at her with those impossibly serious gray eyes. Mama? Yeah? Do you think my daddy is ever coming back? Scarlett froze. Elena had asked about her father before, usually around holidays or when her classmates talked about their dads. But Scarlett had always managed to deflect the question with vague answers about how her daddy loved her very much, but couldn't be here right now. But tonight, with Luca lying in a hospital bed 20 blocks away, the lie felt heavier than ever. Why are you asking? Scarlett said carefully. Elena shrugged. Sarah's dad came to school today for career day. He's a firefighter, and I started thinking about my daddy and wondering if he's a firefighter too, or maybe a doctor like you, or maybe... Elena stopped. Scarlett took a deep breath. Your daddy isn't a firefighter or a doctor. Then what is he? Scarlett hesitated. What was she supposed to say? That Elena's father was a mafia boss who'd spent the last 7 years dismantling a criminal empire from the inside? That he'd left before Elena was born to protect them from people who wanted them dead? That he was currently recovering from multiple gunshot wounds in the ICU? None of those were answers a 7-year-old needed to hear. He's complicated, Scarlett said finally. Elena frowned. What does that mean? It means he made some hard choices a long time ago, and those choices meant he couldn't be here with us. Did he not want me? No! Scarlett's voice came out sharper than she intended. She softened it immediately. No, baby, that's not it at all. He didn't even know you existed. Elena's eyes widened. He didn't know about me? Scarlett shook her head. No, I never got the chance to tell him. Why not? Because he left before I could. Elena was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she looked up at Scarlett with an expression far too serious for a 7-year-old. If he knew about me, would he come back? Scarlett's chest tightened. Because the answer was yes. She'd seen it in Luca's eyes when she told him about Elena. The devastation, the regret, the desperate need to meet the daughter he never knew he had. I think so, Scarlett said quietly. Elena's face lit up. Really? Yeah. Then we should tell him. Scarlett's stomach twisted. It's not that simple, baby. Why not? Because your daddy's world is different from ours. It's dangerous, and I need to make sure that if he comes into our lives, he won't put you in danger. Elena's expression turned stubborn. I'm not scared. I know you're not, but I am. Elena wrapped her small arms around Scarlett's neck again. You don't have to be scared, Mama. You're the bravest person I know. Scarlett's eyes burned with tears. She held Elena close and wondered how the hell she was supposed to protect this perfect little girl from the storm that was coming. Because Luca Moretti wasn't going to stay in that hospital bed forever. And when he woke up fully, when he recovered, when he came looking for answers, everything was going to change. Scarlett didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Elena curled up beside her, breathing softly in her sleep. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic and the occasional siren wailing through the city. Scarlett's phone sat on the nightstand. She kept waiting for it to ring, kept waiting for the hospital to call and tell her that Luca had coded again, or that he'd woken up asking for her, or that he'd disappeared just like he had 7 years ago. But the phone stayed silent, and Scarlett stayed awake. By the time the sun rose, she'd made a decision. She was going to let Luca meet Elena, not because she trusted him, not because she'd forgiven him, but because Elena deserved to know her father, and because Scarlett had spent 7 years lying to herself about how much Luca still meant to her, and she was tired of running. Basam. 3 days later, Luca was moved out of the ICU. His recovery had been faster than anyone expected. The bullets had been removed, the internal bleeding had stopped, and his vitals had stabilized enough that the medical team felt comfortable transferring him to a private recovery room on the 4th floor. Scarlett had avoided seeing him during those 3 days. She'd assigned Angela to monitor his case and stayed as far away from his room as possible. But on the 4th morning, she got a text from Angela. He's asking for you. Scarlett stared at the message for a long moment. Then she walked toward his room before she could change her mind. Luca was sitting up in bed when she entered. The bandages around his chest were still visible beneath the hospital gown, and there were dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there before. But he looked stronger, more alert, more like the man she used to know. Scarlett, he said quietly. She closed the door behind her. Angela said you wanted to see me. Yeah. Why? Luca exhaled slowly. Because I need to apologize. You already did. No. I apologized for leaving. I didn't apologize for what I said after. He paused. When I asked to meet Elena, I wasn't thinking about what that would mean for you. I was only thinking about myself, about how much I wanted to see her. And that was selfish. Scarlett crossed her arms. Yeah, it was. So I'm sorry. And if you don't want me anywhere near her, I'll respect that. Scarlett studied his face. He meant it. She could see it in his eyes. I've been thinking about it, she said slowly. Luca went very still. And I think Elena deserves to meet you, but there are rules. Okay? First, you don't tell her who you are. Not yet. She's 7, Luca. She doesn't need to know that her father is a mafia boss. Luca flinched, but nodded. Understood. Second, if she gets scared or uncomfortable, we leave. No arguments, no pushing. Agreed. And third, Scarlett's voice hardened. If you hurt her, if you make promises you can't keep, or if you disappear again, I will never forgive you. Do you understand? Luca's jaw tightened. I understand. Good. Scarlett turned to leave, but Luca's voice stopped her. Scarlett? She looked back. Thank you, he said quietly, for giving me this chance. Scarlett didn't answer. She just walked out before the emotions threatening to break through her carefully constructed walls could destroy her completely. That afternoon, Scarlett picked Elena up from school early. Elena was thrilled. She chattered nonstop in the car about her day, about the art project she'd finished, about how her friend Sarah had gotten in trouble for talking during math class. Scarlett listened with half her attention while the other half focused on the impossible conversation she was about to have. When they pulled into the hospital parking garage, Elena's chatter stopped. "Why are we here?" she asked. Scarlett turned off the engine and looked at her daughter. "There's someone I want you to meet." Elena's eyes widened. "Who?" Scarlett took a deep breath. "Someone important, someone who cares about you very much." Elena frowned, confused. "Do I know them?" "Not yet." They walked through the hospital together, Elena's small hand wrapped tightly around Scarlett's. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt like it lasted forever. By the time they reached Luca's room, Scarlett's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She stopped outside the door. Elena looked up at her. "Mama, are you okay?" Scarlett nodded, even though it was a lie. "Yeah, baby, I'm fine." Then she pushed open the door. Luca was standing by the window. He changed out of the hospital gown and into a black t-shirt and jeans that someone must have brought him. The bandages were still visible beneath the shirt, and he moved carefully, like every breath hurt. But the moment he saw Elena, everything else disappeared. He froze. Elena froze. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Elena whispered, "Who is he?" Scarlett's throat tightened. "This is Luca. He's an old friend of mine." Luca's eyes never left Elena's face. He looked like he was staring at something impossible, something he'd dreamed about but never thought he'd actually see. "Hi, Elena," he said softly. Elena stepped closer, studying him with the same serious intensity she used when she was trying to solve a puzzle. "How do you know my name?" "Your mom told me about you." "She did?" Luca nodded. "She said you're smart and brave, and that you love drawing." Elena's eyes lit up. "I do. I drew a picture of a dragon yesterday. Do you want to see it?" Luca's voice cracked. "I'd love to." Elena pulled her backpack off and started digging through it, searching for the drawing. While she was distracted, Luca's eyes met Scarlett's across the room. And in that moment, Scarlett saw everything he was feeling. The joy, the grief, the overwhelming love for a daughter he'd just met, and the soul-crushing knowledge that he'd missed the first 7 years of her life. A single tear slid down Luca's face. He wiped it away quickly before Elena could see. Elena found the drawing and held it up proudly. "See? It's breathing fire." Luca crouched down, wincing slightly from the movement, so he was eye level with her. "That's amazing. You're really talented." Elena beamed. "Thanks. Mama says I get it from her, but I don't think so. She can't draw anything except hearts." Luca laughed. It was a broken sound, but it was real. And for the first time in 7 years, Scarlett saw something in Luca's eyes that hadn't been there before. Hope. Elena talked nonstop for the next 30 minutes. She told Luca about school, about her friends, about the science project she was working on, about how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up because she loved animals. Luca listened to every word like it was the most important thing he'd ever heard. And Scarlett stood by the door watching them, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. Because this was what Elena had always wanted, a father who paid attention, who cared, who looked at her like she was the most important person in the world. And despite everything Luca had done, despite all the lies and the pain and the years of absence, he was giving Elena exactly that. Eventually, Elena yawned. Scarlett stepped forward. "Okay, baby, it's time to go. Luca needs to rest." Elena pouted, "But I don't want to leave yet." "I know, but we'll come back soon, I promise." Elena turned to Luca. "Will you still be here tomorrow?" Luca glanced at Scarlett. Scarlett nodded. "Yeah," Luca said softly. "I'll be here." Elena smiled. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Luca's waist in a tight hug. Luca went rigid. For 3 seconds, he didn't move. Then his arms came up slowly and wrapped around her, holding her like she was made of glass. Scarlett's vision blurred with tears. When Elena finally pulled back, she looked up at Luca with those serious gray eyes. "I'm glad I met you." Luca's voice broke. "I'm glad I met you too." Scarlett took Elena's hand and led her toward the door. But before they left, she looked back at Luca one last time. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Scarlett realized something terrifying. She wasn't just letting Luca meet Elena, she was letting him back into her life. And there was no going back from this. That night, Elena fell asleep almost immediately. Scarlett sat beside her bed, stroking her daughter's dark curls and trying to process everything that had happened. Elena had liked Luca, more than liked him. She'd hugged him, laughed with him, connected with him in a way that Scarlett hadn't expected. And now Scarlett had to figure out what the hell came next. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you. L." Scarlett stared at the message. She shouldn't respond. Should delete the number and pretend she never saw it, but her fingers were already typing. "She liked you." The response came immediately. "She's perfect." "Yeah, she is. She looks just like you." Scarlett's chest tightened. "She has your eyes." "Lucky her." Scarlett almost smiled. Then another message came through. "Can I see her again?" Scarlett hesitated. This was dangerous. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to cut this off now before it went any further. But when she looked down at Elena sleeping peacefully beside her, she knew what her answer had to be. "Tomorrow. Same time. Thank you, Scarlett." She didn't respond, just turned off her phone and tried to ignore the way her heart was racing, because she'd just made a choice, and there was no going back. Okay, Tam. Luca was discharged from the hospital 2 days later. Scarlett wasn't supposed to be there when it happened. Angela had handled all the discharge paperwork, and Scarlett had intentionally scheduled herself for a surgery during the time Luca was supposed to leave. But the surgery got canceled, and when Scarlett walked past the fourth-floor recovery wing, she saw Luca standing by the elevator with a black duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He wasn't alone. 3 men in expensive suits flanked him, bodyguards, obviously. They moved with the kind of precision that came from years of training, their eyes constantly scanning the hallway for threats. Luca saw her immediately. For 3 seconds, they just stared at each other. Then one of the bodyguards stepped forward. "Mr. Moretti, we need to go." Luca ignored him. He walked toward Scarlett slowly, favoring his left side where the worst of the injuries had been. "You're leaving," Scarlett said. "Yeah." "Where are you going?" Luca hesitated. "Somewhere safe. There are still people from my old organization who want me dead. I can't stay in the city until I know they've been dealt with." Scarlett's stomach dropped. "What about Elena?" "I'll come back, as soon as it's safe." "You said that 7 years ago." The words hung in the air like poison. Luca flinched. "I know, but this time is different." "How?" "Because this time, I have something worth coming back for." Scarlett's throat tightened. One of the bodyguards spoke again, more urgently this time. "Mr. Moretti, we really need to move." Luca didn't look away from Scarlett. "I meant what I said. I'll come back. And when I do, I want to be part of her life, part of both your lives. If you'll let me." Scarlett didn't answer. She couldn't. Because despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the years of pain, part of her wanted him to come back. Part of her had never stopped wanting him, and that terrified her more than anything. Luca reached out and gently touched her hand. The contact sent electricity through her entire body. "I'll call you," he said quietly. Then he turned and walked toward the elevator, his bodyguards closing ranks around him. Scarlett stood frozen in the hallway, her hand still tingling from his touch. The elevator doors closed, and Luca Moretti disappeared from her life for the second time. But this time, Scarlett knew he was coming back, and she didn't know whether that made everything better or infinitely worse. 3 weeks passed. Luca called every night. Sometimes he talked to Elena, asking about her day and listening with infinite patience while she rambled about school and friends and the new book series she was reading. Sometimes he talked to Scarlett, his voice quiet and careful, asking how she was doing and whether she needed anything. He never told them where he was, never explained what he was doing, but Scarlett could hear it in his voice, the exhaustion, the violence lingering just beneath the surface, the sound of a man fighting a war he couldn't talk about. Elena didn't notice, She just loved getting calls from Luca. She talked about him constantly at school, telling her friends about the cool guy her mom knew who called her every night and listened to all her stories. And every time Elena smiled while talking to him, Scarlett felt the walls around her heart crack a little more. Until one night, everything changed. Scarlett was cooking dinner when her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Heavy breathing, then a voice she didn't recognize. Dr. Vale? Scarlett's blood went cold. Who is this? My name doesn't matter. What matters is that Luca Moretti made some powerful enemies, and those enemies know about you, about your daughter. The world tilted sideways. Scarlett gripped the counter to steady herself. What do you want? Nothing. This is a courtesy call. Luca killed my brother 3 days ago, so I'm going to return the favor. I'm going to take everything he loves and destroy it right in front of him. The line went dead. Scarlett's hands started shaking. She dropped the phone, ran to Elena's room. Elena was sitting on her bed, headphones on, watching videos on her tablet. She looked up when Scarlett burst through the door. Mama? What's wrong? Scarlett grabbed Elena and pulled her close, her mind racing. Someone knew about them. Someone was coming, and Luca wasn't here to stop them. Her phone rang again. She answered without looking. Hello? Scarlett, it's me, Luca. Someone just called me, Scarlett said, her voice shaking. They said they know about Elena. They said they're coming for us. Luca's voice turned lethal. Did they say who they were? No. They just said you killed their brother, Luca cursed. Where are you right now? Home. Get out, right now, pack a bag, take Elena, and get somewhere public, a police station, a hospital, anywhere with people. Luca, do it now, Scarlett. Scarlett's training kicked in. She hung up the phone and started moving. Elena, we're leaving, right now. Elena's eyes widened. What? Why? I'll explain later. Just grab your backpack and your coat. They moved fast. Scarlett threw clothes into a bag while Elena scrambled around her room collecting her things. Within 5 minutes, they were heading toward the door. And then Scarlett heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside, slow, deliberate. Someone was already here. Scarlett's heart stopped. She grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her toward the back bedroom. Mama, what's happening? Elena whispered, her voice terrified. Shh. It's okay, baby. Just stay quiet. Scarlett locked the bedroom door and pushed Elena toward the window. They were on the 3rd floor, too high to jump. But there was a fire escape. The apartment door exploded inward. Elena screamed. Scarlett shoved her daughter behind her and grabbed the only weapon she could find, a heavy lamp from the nightstand. Footsteps echoed through the apartment, getting closer. Scarlett's hand shook as she positioned herself between Elena and the bedroom door. This was it. This was how they were going to die. Because of Luca. Because of his world. Because she'd been stupid enough to let him back into their lives. The bedroom door handle turned. Scarlett raised the lamp. And then the entire world exploded into gunfire. Glass shattered. Wood splintered. Voices shouted. Someone screamed. Elena sobbed behind her. Scarlett didn't move. Couldn't move. Then the bedroom door burst open, and Luca Moretti stood in the doorway covered in blood, a gun in his hand, his eyes wild and feral. Are you hurt? He demanded. Scarlett shook her head, unable to speak. Luca crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled both of them into his arms. You're safe, he whispered against Scarlett's hair. I've got you. You're safe. But Scarlett knew the truth. They would never be safe, not as long as Luca's past kept hunting them. And in that moment, she realized something that made her blood run cold. There was no going back anymore, no running, no pretending they could have a normal life. Luca Moretti had dragged them into his world, and the only way out was through. The silence after the gunfire was worse than the noise. Scarlett stood frozen in the bedroom with Elena trembling against her chest and Luca's arms wrapped around them both. Her ears rang, her hands shook. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled the air so thick she could taste it. Mama, Elena whispered. Mama, I'm scared. Scarlett couldn't answer. Her voice had disappeared somewhere between the moment the door exploded inward and the moment Luca appeared like some avenging ghost covered in someone else's blood. Luca pulled back slowly, his hands moving to cup Scarlett's face. Look at me. She couldn't. Scarlett, look at me. She forced her eyes up. Luca's face was splattered with blood, but his eyes were clear, focused. The kind of terrifying calm that only came from someone who'd lived through this kind of violence so many times it didn't even faze him anymore. Are you hurt? He asked again. Scarlett shook her head. Elena? She's fine, Scarlett managed. Luca exhaled, and for just a second, the mask cracked. Relief flooded his expression so intense it looked like pain. Then he locked it down again and turned toward the door. Stay here. Don't move. Don't make a sound. Luca, I need to make sure they're all down. He disappeared into the hallway before Scarlett could stop him. Elena sobbed against her chest. Mama, what's happening? Who were those men? Why did they have guns? Scarlett had no answers. She just held her daughter and tried to keep breathing while her entire world collapsed around her. Footsteps echoed through the apartment. Voices. Luca's voice, low and commanding, speaking to someone Scarlett couldn't see. Then silence again. Luca reappeared in the doorway. It's clear, but we need to move. Now. Move where? Somewhere safe. Luca, what the hell is going on? I'll explain later. Right now, we need to get you both out of this building before the police show up. Scarlett's mind was still trying to process. The police? Luca, there are dead men in my apartment. I know. We can't just leave. Yes, we can. And we will. Luca's voice turned hard. Because if the police get involved, they'll start asking questions. And those questions will lead them straight to you and Elena. And the people who sent these men will know exactly where to find you. Scarlett's stomach twisted. He was right. As much as she wanted to call 911 to let the authorities handle this like normal people did when armed men broke into their homes, she couldn't. Because this wasn't a normal situation. And Luca Moretti wasn't a normal man. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's go. Luca moved fast. He grabbed Scarlett's bag, took Elena's hand, and led them through the apartment. Scarlett tried not to look at the bodies sprawled across her living room floor, but she couldn't help it. 3 men, all dead. Blood pooling beneath them, soaking into the carpet she'd picked out 2 years ago when she'd finally saved enough money to move into a decent place. Her home, destroyed. They took the back stairwell down to the parking garage. Luca's bodyguards were waiting beside a black SUV with tinted windows. One of them opened the back door, and Luca practically shoved Scarlett and Elena inside before climbing in after them. The SUV was moving before Scarlett could even process what was happening. Elena sat pressed against her side, silent now, her eyes wide and glassy with shock. Scarlett wrapped her arm around her daughter and tried to pretend everything was fine, but it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. Luca sat across from them, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid-fire Italian to someone on the other end. Scarlett caught enough words to understand he was organizing something. Safe houses, security teams, cleanup crews to handle the mess they'd left behind. When he finally hung up, he looked at Scarlett. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Scarlett laughed. It was a broken, bitter sound. You're sorry? 3 men just tried to kill us because of you, and you're sorry? Luca flinched. I didn't know they'd found you this fast. How did they find us at all? I don't know. You don't know? Luca, you told me you'd handled this. You told me you'd dismantled your organization. You told me we were safe. I thought we were. Well, you thought wrong, Elena whimpered. Scarlett immediately softened her voice and pulled Elena closer. It's okay, baby. Mama's not mad at you. Are we going to die? Elena whispered. Scarlett's heart shattered. No, Luca said before Scarlett could answer. His voice was firm, absolute. No one is going to hurt you, I promise. Elena looked at him with those impossibly serious gray eyes. How do you know? Because I won't let them. It should have sounded arrogant, overconfident, but the way Luca said it, with the kind of certainty that came from someone who'd killed 3 men without hesitation to protect them, made Scarlett believe him. And that terrified her even more. The safe house was in New Jersey, a sprawling estate hidden behind iron gates and surrounded by enough security cameras and armed guards to make Fort Knox look vulnerable. Luca's men had cleared the building before they arrived, sweeping every room for threats, And now Scarlett and Elena sat in a massive living room that felt more like a museum than a home. Elena had finally fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from crying. Scarlett sat beside her, one hand resting on Elena's back, watching her daughter breathe. Luca stood by the window, staring out at the darkness. They hadn't spoken since they'd arrived. Finally, Scarlett broke the silence. Who were they? Luca didn't turn around. Remnants of my old organization, the DeLuca family. I thought I'd eliminated their leadership 3 weeks ago, but apparently I missed someone. The brother. Yeah. And now he's coming for us. Luca's jaw tightened. Not anymore. He sent his men after you, which means he exposed his location. My people are tracking him down right now. Scarlett's hands curled into fists. Your people, your organization, your war. Her voice cracked. This is your fault, Luca. I know. Do you? Because Elena just watched armed men break into our home. She just asked me if we were going to die. She's 7 years old, and she's terrified because of you. Luca turned slowly. The look on his face was devastating. I know, he said again, his voice raw, and I would give anything to take that fear away from her, from you. But I can't change what happened. All I can do is make sure it never happens again. How? By killing everyone who comes after us? By turning our lives into a war zone? If that's what it takes? That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. The words echoed through the room. Elena stirred but didn't wake. Scarlett lowered her voice. I can't do this, Luca. I can't raise my daughter in a world where men with guns break down our door in the middle of the night. I can't live looking over my shoulder every second wondering if today's the day someone finally gets through your security. You won't have to. Yes, I will. Because that's your world, and no matter how many people you kill, there's always going to be someone else. Another enemy, another threat, another reason for Elena to be scared. Luca crossed the room and knelt in front of her. Up close, Scarlett could see the exhaustion carved into his face. The scars. The shadows of violence that would never fully wash away. You're right, he said quietly. My world is dangerous, it's brutal, and it's not the kind of place I want Elena anywhere near. But I didn't choose this life because I wanted power or money or fear. I chose it because I was born into it. And by the time I was old enough to understand what that meant, it was too late to walk away. It's not too late now. Yes, it is. Because the only way to truly leave this world is to die. And I'm not ready to die. Not when I just found you again. Not when I just met my daughter. Scarlett's throat tightened. Luca reached out and took her hand. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I'm asking for one anyway. Not for me. For Elena. Because she deserves to have a father who will protect her. Who will fight for her. Who will die for her if that's what it takes. Scarlett pulled her hand away. Elena doesn't need a father who's willing to die for her. She needs a father who's willing to live for her, and you can't do that if you're constantly at war. Luca didn't have an answer for that. He just stood and walked back to the window, his shoulders rigid with tension. Scarlett watched him for a long moment. Then she carefully lifted Elena and carried her upstairs to one of the bedrooms. Scarlett didn't sleep that night. She lay beside Elena in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do. Stay with Luca and risk Elena's life? Or run and spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders? Neither option felt right. But she didn't have a third choice. Around 3 in the morning, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. A text from Angela. Are you okay? I heard about your apartment. Call me. Scarlett closed her eyes. She'd completely forgotten about the outside world, about her job, about the life she'd built that had just been destroyed in a single night. She typed back quickly. I'm fine. Elena's fine. I'll explain later. Angela's response was immediate. Where are you? Somewhere safe. Scarlett, what the hell is going on? Scarlett didn't answer. She just turned off her phone and tried not to think about how many lies she was going to have to tell to keep the people she loved safe. The next morning, Luca called a meeting. Scarlett left Elena with one of Luca's security team, a woman named Maria who looked like she could break someone's neck with her bare hands but spoke to Elena with surprising gentleness, and followed Luca down to the basement. The space had been converted into some kind of operations center. Multiple monitors lined the walls, displaying security camera feeds, maps, and what looked like surveillance photos of various men Scarlett didn't recognize. 3 of Luca's people were already there, 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in black, all carrying weapons. Luca gestured for Scarlett to sit. She stayed standing. "We've located Marco DeLuca," Luca said without preamble. "He's holed up in a warehouse in Queens with what's left of his crew. My team is ready to move on him tonight." "And then what?" Scarlett asked. "Then the threat is eliminated. Until the next one." Luca's jaw tightened. "There won't be a next one. Marco is the last surviving member of the DeLuca family leadership. Once he's gone, there's no one left with the resources or connections to come after you." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." "How?" Luca hesitated. Then he reached for one of the monitors and pulled up a series of documents. Financial records, wire transfers, names and dates that meant nothing to Scarlett. "I've spent the last 7 years dismantling my father's empire piece by piece," Luca said. "I shut down the trafficking operations, burned the drug routes, cut ties with every corrupt politician and dirty cop on the payroll. The only reason Marco DeLuca is still alive is because he went into hiding before I could reach him. But now he's exposed himself. And once he's dead, there's no one left." Scarlett stared at the documents. "You really did it," she whispered. "You destroyed everything." "Yes." "Why?" Luca looked at her. "Because the empire my father built was poison, and I didn't want that poison anywhere near you." Scarlett's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that one more death would be enough to finally end this nightmare. But something in her gut told her it wasn't that simple. "What happens after Marco's dead?" she asked quietly. "You and Elena can go home." "Can we?" "Yes." "And you?" Luca didn't answer. Scarlett's stomach dropped. "You're not coming with us." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because even with Marco gone, there are still people out there who know my name, who know what I did. And as long as I'm close to you and Elena, you'll always be targets." Scarlett's hands curled into fists. "So what are you saying? You're just going to disappear again?" "I'm saying I'll keep my distance until I'm sure you're safe." "That's the same thing." "No, it's not. This time, you'll know where I am. You'll be able to reach me. And the moment Elena needs me, I'll be there." "She needs you now, Luca." "I know." "Then don't leave." Luca's expression cracked. "I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do. You always have a choice. You're just choosing your war over your daughter." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're doing the exact same thing you did 7 years ago. You're running away because it's easier than staying and fighting for us." Luca flinched like she'd slapped him. One of his men cleared his throat. "Boss, we need to move if we're going to hit the warehouse tonight." Luca didn't look away from Scarlett. "Give me a minute." The team filed out of the room. The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Luca spoke. "You're right," he said quietly. "I am running. Because staying puts you in danger, and I can't live with that. So you're choosing to live without us instead." "Yes." Scarlett's vision blurred with tears. "Then you're a coward," she whispered. Luca's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Scarlett turned and walked toward the door. But before she left, she looked back one last time. "Elena's going to ask where you went, and I'm going to tell her the truth. That you left. Again. And this time, don't bother coming back." Then she walked out before he could see her fall apart. That night, Luca and his team left for Queens. Scarlett watched from the upstairs window as the convoy of black SUVs disappeared down the driveway. Maria stayed behind with a skeleton security crew to guard the safe house. Elena was asleep. Scarlett sat in the hallway outside her daughter's room with her back against the wall and her phone in her hand. She wanted to call Luca, wanted to tell him to be careful, wanted to tell him she didn't mean what she'd said earlier. But she couldn't, because she had meant it. Luca was choosing his past over their future, and she was done waiting for him to choose differently. Around midnight, her phone rang. Unknown number. Scarlett answered. "Hello? Dr. Vale?" The voice was calm, professional. "My name is Vincent Caruso. I'm an associate of Marco DeLuca." Scarlett's blood went cold. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important. What's important is that Luca Moretti is about to walk into a trap. And unless you do exactly what I say, he's going to die tonight. Scarlett's heart stopped. What are you talking about? Marco knew Luca would come for him, so he set up an ambush. The warehouse in Queens is rigged with explosives. The moment Luca's team enters the building, it's going to blow. You're lying. Am I? Call him. Warn him. See if he picks up. Scarlett's hands shook as she pulled the phone away from her ear and dialed Luca's number. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. Her stomach twisted. Vincent's voice came through the speaker. He's already inside, isn't he? Scarlett couldn't breathe. What do you want? Simple. You and the girl, in exchange for Luca's life. No. Then he dies, along with everyone on his team. Scarlett's mind raced. This was a trap. It had to be. But what if it wasn't? What if Luca really was walking into an ambush right now, and she was the only person who could stop it? How do I know you're telling the truth? She whispered. You don't, but are you willing to bet Luca's life on it? Scarlett closed her eyes. She had two choices. Trust Vincent and hand herself and Elena over to the same people who'd tried to kill them yesterday, or ignore him and hope he was lying. Either way, someone was going to die. Where? She said finally. Vincent gave her an address in Brooklyn. You have 30 minutes, he said. Come alone. Bring the girl. And if I see any of Moretti's people, the warehouse blows immediately. The line went dead. Scarlett sat frozen for 3 seconds. Then she stood and walked toward Elena's room. She knew this was insane, knew she was walking into another trap. But she couldn't let Luca die. Not like this. Not when she just told him she never wanted to see him again. She woke Elena gently. Baby, we need to go. Elena blinked sleepily. Where? I'll explain in the car, but we need to be very quiet, okay? Elena nodded. Scarlett grabbed her daughter's hand and led her downstairs. Maria was in the kitchen drinking coffee. She looked up when Scarlett appeared. Dr. Vale, is everything okay? Yeah, Elena couldn't sleep. I'm going to take her for a drive. Maria frowned. I don't think that's a good idea. Mr. Moretti left strict instructions. I don't care what Luca's instructions were. My daughter needs fresh air, and I'm taking her. Maria stood. I can't let you leave without clearing it with... Scarlett grabbed the heavy ceramic vase from the hallway table and swung it at Maria's head. The impact was sickening. Maria crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Elena screamed. Scarlett dropped the vase and grabbed Elena's hand. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry, but we have to go. Right now. They ran for the garage. Scarlett found keys to one of the SUVs hanging on a hook by the door. She shoved Elena into the back seat, climbed behind the wheel, and floored the gas pedal. The gates were closed. Scarlett didn't slow down. She aimed the SUV straight at the iron bars and braced for impact. The collision was deafening. Metal screamed, glass shattered, but the gates gave way. The SUV burst through and out onto the dark road beyond. Scarlett's hands shook on the wheel. Behind her, Elena sobbed. Mama, what's happening? Where are we going? Scarlett couldn't answer because she didn't know. All she knew was that she'd just betrayed Luca's trust, assaulted one of his people, and was driving straight into an ambush with her daughter in the back seat. And there was no turning back now. The address Vincent had given her led to an abandoned factory in Brooklyn. The building loomed against the night sky like a corpse, all broken windows and rusted metal. Scarlett pulled up to the entrance and killed the engine. Her phone rang. Vincent. Good, he said. You came. Now get out of the car. Bring the girl. Walk to the loading dock on the east side of the building. I want proof Luca's still alive. You're not in a position to make demands, Dr. Vale. Then I'm leaving. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then another voice came on the line. Scarlett, don't do this. Luca. His voice was strained, rough, but alive. Luca, Scarlett whispered. They're lying to you. The warehouse wasn't rigged. This whole thing is a setup to get you and Elena. Scarlett's stomach dropped. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't apologize. Just turn around and drive away. Right now. Vincent's voice cut back in. You have 10 seconds to get out of that car, Dr. Vale, or I put a bullet in Moretti's head. Scarlett's hands shook. Scarlett, don't! A gunshot cracked through the phone. Scarlett screamed, then silence. That was a warning, Vincent said calmly. The next one goes through his skull. Now move. Scarlett couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She looked back at Elena, who was crying silently in the back seat. Then she opened the door and stepped out into the night. "Mama, no!" Elena shouted. "Stay in the car, baby!" "Bring the girl," Vincent said. Scarlett's chest tightened. She opened the back door and lifted Elena into her arms. Then she walked toward the loading dock. The moment she stepped inside the building, armed men surrounded her, 6 of them, all pointing guns at her head. Vincent Caruso stepped out of the shadows. He was younger than Scarlett expected, mid-30s, expensive suit, cold eyes. "Dr. Vale," he said. "So glad you could join us." Scarlett held Elena tighter. "Where's Luca?" Vincent gestured toward the back of the room. Luca was on his knees with his hands zip-tied behind his back and blood streaming down the side of his face. 2 men stood behind him, guns pressed against the back of his head. His eyes met Scarlett's, and the look on his face destroyed her. Rage, desperation, and underneath it all, love so fierce it burned. "Let them go," Luca said, his voice raw. "This is between you and me." Vincent smiled. "You're right. It is. But where's the fun in just killing you? I want you to watch everything you love die first, just like I had to watch when you killed my brother." Scarlett's blood turned to ice. "Marco DeLuca was your brother," she whispered. "Half-brother. But yes. Then why isn't he here?" Vincent's smile widened. "Because Marco's dead. Has been for 3 hours. Your boyfriend's team blew up the warehouse just like they planned. But what Luca didn't know is that Marco wasn't inside. I was, and I let them think they'd won." Luca's expression turned murderous. "You set me up. I set you up. And now I'm going to take everything from you the same way you took everything from me." He raised his gun, pointed it at Elena. Scarlett's world stopped. "No!" Luca roared. He lunged forward despite the guns at his head. Gunfire exploded through the factory. Scarlett threw herself over Elena, covering her daughter's body with her own. She waited for the bullet, waited for the pain, but it never came. When she looked up, Luca was standing. The zip ties hung broken from his wrists. Vincent Caruso lay on the ground with his throat slit, and Luca's men were pouring through the doors, cutting down the remaining guards in a storm of violence that lasted less than 10 seconds. Then silence. Luca crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees beside Scarlett and Elena. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. Scarlett shook her head, unable to speak. Luca pulled both of them into his arms and held them so tight Scarlett thought her ribs might crack. "I thought I lost you," he whispered against her hair. Scarlett couldn't answer, because she'd just realized something that made her entire body go numb. She'd walked straight into Vincent's trap. She'd brought Elena into a building full of armed men. She'd almost gotten her daughter killed, all because she'd been stupid enough to believe she could save Luca. And now, as she looked around at the bodies scattered across the factory floor, at the blood soaking into the concrete, at the gun still clutched in Luca's hand, she understood the truth. There was no escaping this world, no running from it, no protecting Elena from it, because as long as Luca Moretti was in their lives, violence would follow. And Scarlett had just proven that she was willing to risk everything, even her daughter's life, to save him. She pulled away from Luca's embrace and stood on shaking legs. "We need to leave," she said quietly. Luca nodded. "My men will clean this up." "No, I mean, we need to leave. Elena and I, we need to go somewhere you can't find us." Luca froze. "What?" "This." Scarlett gestured at the carnage surrounding them. "This is your life, Luca, and I can't let Elena be part of it anymore." "Scarlett, I almost got her killed tonight. Do you understand that? I brought my 7-year-old daughter into a building full of men who wanted to murder her, and I did it because I was trying to save you." Her voice cracked. "I can't do that again. I won't." Luca's face went pale. "Please, don't do this. I have to." "Scarlett, I love you. I love Elena. I'll do anything. Then let us go." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Luca looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay. If that's what you need, I'll let you go." Scarlett's chest cracked open. She'd expected him to fight, to argue, to refuse, but he was just letting her leave, just like he had 7 years ago. She lifted Elena into her arms and walked toward the door without looking back, because if she looked back, she would break. And she couldn't afford to break, not when her daughter's life depended on her staying strong. But as she stepped out into the cold night air, one thought echoed through her mind. She'd just lost Luca Moretti for the second time, and this time it was her choice. Scarlett drove through the night with no destination in mind, just away from the factory, away from the bodies, away from Luca. Elena had fallen asleep in the back seat 20 minutes ago, her face still streaked with tears. Scarlett kept checking the rearview mirror, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, making sure she was still breathing, still alive, still safe. The word felt like a lie. They would never be safe. Not really. Not as long as people knew Luca Moretti had a daughter. Scarlett's phone had been ringing non-stop for the past hour. Luca's number flashing across the screen over and over again. She'd ignored every call, deleted every voicemail without listening, because if she heard his voice, she would turn the car around. And she couldn't afford to be that weak. Not anymore. Around 4 in the morning, she pulled into a cheap motel off the highway in Pennsylvania. The kind of place that didn't ask questions and took cash. She carried Elena inside, got a room key from a half-asleep clerk, and locked the door behind them. The room smelled like cigarettes and mold. Elena stirred when Scarlett laid her on the bed. "Mama? I'm here, baby. Where are we?" "Somewhere safe." Another lie. Elena's eyes were still half closed. "Is Luca coming?" Scarlett's throat tightened. "No." "Why not?" "Because he can't be with us right now." "Did he leave again?" The words hit like a knife. Scarlett smoothed Elena's hair back from her forehead. "It's complicated." "You always say that." "I know." Elena was quiet for a moment, then she whispered, "I miss him." Scarlett's chest cracked open. She wanted to say she missed him too, wanted to admit that walking away from Luca in that factory had felt like ripping out her own heart. But she couldn't, because she was the mother, the protector, and her job was to keep Elena safe, no matter how much it destroyed her. "Get some sleep," Scarlett whispered. "We'll figure everything out tomorrow." Elena closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep again. Scarlett sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her phone. 17 missed calls from Luca, 23 text messages. She opened the most recent one. "Please talk to me." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to respond. Wanted to tell him she was sorry for walking away. Wanted to tell him she didn't know how to do this without him. But before she could type anything, another message came through. "I know you're scared. I know you think running is the only way to protect Elena, but you're wrong. The safest place for both of you is with me." Scarlett's hands shook. She typed back before she could stop herself. "Your world almost got her killed." The response was immediate. "My world is the only reason she's still alive." "That's not good enough." "Then what is?" "Tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it." Scarlett closed her eyes. What did she need? She needed Luca to stop being who he was. She needed him to walk away from the violence and the danger and the empire he'd spent 7 years dismantling. She needed him to be a normal man with a normal life who could take Elena to school in the morning and tuck her in at night without worrying about assassins and ambushes. But that wasn't who Luca was, and it never would be. "There's nothing you can do. I'm sorry." She turned off her phone before he could respond. Then she lay down beside Elena and tried to convince herself she'd made the right choice. Msich. Scarlett woke to sunlight streaming through the motel curtains and the sound of someone pounding on the door. She jerked upright, her heart slamming against her ribs. Elena sat up too, her eyes wide. "Mama?" The pounding came again, louder this time. "Dr. Vale, open the door." Scarlett's blood went cold. She recognized that voice. Angela. What the hell was Angela doing here? Scarlett climbed out of bed and moved to the door. She looked through the peephole. Angela stood outside wearing jeans and a leather jacket, her expression furious. Scarlett opened the door slowly. "How did you find me?" Angela pushed past her into the room. "I put a tracker on your phone 6 months ago after you started working late shifts alone. I was worried about you walking to your car at night." She turned to face Scarlett. "Guess it came in handy." Scarlett's hands curled into fists. "You need to leave." "Like hell I do. You disappeared from a safe house, assaulted one of Moretti's people, and drove 3 hours into the middle of nowhere with Elena. Do you have any idea how many laws you just broke? I was protecting my daughter. By kidnapping her and running away? I didn't kidnap her. She's my daughter. And Luca's daughter, too. The words hit harder than they should have. Scarlett turned away. He doesn't get to claim her. Not after everything he's done. Angela's voice softened. What exactly has he done, Scarlett? From where I'm standing, he saved your life multiple times. He also put us in danger in the first place. No, the people who wanted him dead put you in danger. There's a difference. Scarlett didn't answer. Angela stepped closer. Talk to me. What happened at that factory? Scarlett's throat tightened. She hadn't told anyone what happened, hadn't let herself think about it. But now, with Angela standing in front of her demanding answers, the words came pouring out. I walked into a trap. I brought Elena into a building full of armed men because I thought I was saving Luca, and I almost got her killed. Her voice cracked. I almost lost my daughter because I was stupid enough to believe I could fix this. Angela was quiet for a moment. Then she said, But you didn't lose her. That's not the point. Yes, it is. Because despite everything that happened, Elena is safe. She's alive, and she's sitting right there. Angela gestured toward the bed where Elena was watching them with wide eyes. So instead of punishing yourself for making a mistake, maybe you should focus on what comes next. What comes next is we disappear. We change our names. We move somewhere Luca can't find us. And we start over. You really think that's going to work? It has to. Angela shook her head. You can run as far as you want, Scarlett, but Elena is still going to ask about her father, and eventually she's going to resent you for keeping him away from her. Better resentment than dead. Is it? Scarlett opened her mouth to argue, but her phone buzzed. She'd forgotten she'd turned it back on. A text from an unknown number. We have Angela Chen's location. If you want her to live, you'll come back to New York, alone. DC. Scarlett's heart stopped. Angela frowned. What's wrong? Scarlett showed her the message. Angela's face went pale. DC? Who's DC? Scarlett's mind raced. Then it hit her. Dominic Caruso, Vincent's cousin. The one Luca had mentioned was still out there. We need to leave, Scarlett said. Right now. What? Why? Because they know you're here. Which means they're coming. Angela's eyes widened. Scarlett! The window exploded inward. Glass shattered across the room. Elena screamed. Scarlett grabbed her daughter and dove behind the bed. Gunfire tore through the motel room. Bullets ripped through drywall. Angela hit the floor. Scarlett couldn't see if she was hit. Couldn't see anything except Elena's terrified face pressed against her chest. The gunfire stopped. Footsteps crunched across broken glass. Dr. Vale? A man's voice. Calm. Professional. Come out. We're not here to hurt you. We just want to talk. Scarlett didn't move. If you don't come out, we'll drag you out, and your friend dies. Scarlett's hand shook. She looked at Elena. Stay here. Don't move. Don't make a sound. Mama, no. Do what I say. Scarlett kissed Elena's forehead. Then she stood slowly and raised her hands. 3 men stood in the ruins of the motel room, all armed, all pointing guns at her. The one in the middle was younger than the others. Early 20s, dark hair, cold eyes that looked exactly like Vincent's. Dominic Caruso. Dr. Vale, he said. So nice to finally meet you. Scarlett's voice was ice. What do you want? Simple. Luca Moretti's head. But since he's proven difficult to kill, I'll settle for the next best thing. Me. And your daughter. Scarlett's blood turned to ice. No. You don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Dominic smiled. Not this time. He gestured to one of his men. The man moved toward the bed. Scarlett lunged forward. One of the other men grabbed her, slamming her against the wall. Pain exploded through her shoulder. Elena! Scarlett screamed. Run! But Elena didn't run. She just sat frozen on the floor, crying. The man reached for her, and then the entire motel room exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from outside. Dominic's men scattered. Someone crashed through the door. Luca. He moved like death incarnate, gun raised, firing with surgical precision. Two of Dominic's men went down before they could even turn around. The third one grabbed Scarlett and pressed a gun to her head. Luca froze. Dominic smiled. "Drop the weapon, Moretti." Luca's eyes met Scarlett's, and in that moment she saw everything, the rage, the fear, the love. "Let her go," Luca said quietly. "I don't think so." "You want me?" "Here I am. Let her go, and we'll settle this." Dominic laughed. "You really think I'm that stupid? The moment I let her go, you'll put a bullet in my head." "Yes, I will." "Then I guess we're at an impasse." The gun pressed harder against Scarlett's temple. She could feel the man's finger tightening on the trigger. This was it. This was how she was going to die, and Elena was going to watch. But then Angela moved. Scarlett had forgotten about her. Angela had been lying on the floor this whole time, bleeding from a wound in her side. But now she pushed herself up, grabbed the heavy lamp from the nightstand, and swung it at the man holding Scarlett. The impact was brutal. The man's grip loosened. Scarlett tore free. Luca fired. The man went down. Dominic raised his gun toward Elena, and Scarlett threw herself in front of her daughter. The gunshot echoed through the room. Pain exploded through Scarlett's chest. She hit the floor hard. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Just pain. Burning. Spreading. Luca roared. More gunfire. Then silence. Scarlett's vision blurred. She could hear Elena crying, could hear Luca shouting her name, but it all sounded so far away. She tried to speak, but blood filled her throat. Then Luca was there, his hands pressing against her chest, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me," he said. His voice was breaking. "Scarlett, stay with me. Don't you dare die. Don't you dare leave me again." Scarlett tried to smile, tried to tell him she was sorry, tried to tell him she loved him. But the darkness was pulling her under, and she couldn't fight it anymore. The last thing she heard was Elena screaming for her mama. Then nothing. Scarlett woke to the smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of a heart monitor. Her entire body felt like it had been run over by a truck. She tried to move, but pain shot through her chest so sharp it stole her breath. "Don't move," Luca's voice. She turned her head slowly. He sat in a chair beside the hospital bed, his elbows on his knees, his face buried in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were rumpled and stained with blood. Her blood. "Luca," she whispered. His head snapped up. For 3 seconds, he just stared at her. Then he was on his feet, crossing to the bed, his hands reaching for hers. "You're awake," he breathed. "Thank God you're awake." Scarlett's throat was dry. "Lena?" "She's safe. She's with Angela in the waiting room." Relief flooded through her. "Angela's okay? She's fine. The bullet grazed her ribs. She'll be sore for a few weeks, but she'll recover." "And Dominic?" Luca's expression turned cold. "Dead." Scarlett closed her eyes. It was over. Finally over. "How long was I out?" she asked. 3 days. You were in surgery for 7 hours. The bullet punctured your lung and nicked an artery. They almost lost you twice." Scarlett's hands tightened around his. "I'm sorry." "Don't." "Luca, don't apologize. You threw yourself in front of a bullet to protect our daughter. You have nothing to be sorry for." Tears burned in Scarlett's eyes. "I walked away from you." "I know. I told you to let us go." "I know. But you didn't." Luca's voice cracked. "How could I? You're everything to me, Scarlett. You and Elena, and I would rather die than let you face this world alone." Scarlett's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she could protect herself. But the truth was, she couldn't. She'd tried. And she'd almost gotten everyone she loved killed. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to let you into our lives knowing that danger will always follow. Then we deal with it together." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." Luca leaned closer. "I've spent 7 years trying to dismantle my father's empire, trying to make the world safe enough for you and Elena to exist in. And I failed, because no matter how many enemies I eliminate, there's always going to be one more person seeking revenge, one more threat." He paused. "But I'm done running from it. I'm done trying to protect you by staying away. Because the truth is, the only way to keep you safe is to be there. to stand between you and whatever comes next. And I'm ready to do that for the rest of my life. If you'll let me." Scarlett stared at him, at the man who'd destroyed her life and saved it more times than she could count, at the father who'd missed 7 years of his daughter's life and was desperate to make up for every second, at the person she'd never stopped loving, no matter how hard she tried. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I." "What if something happens to you?" "Then you'll survive. Because that's what you do. You survive." Scarlett's tears spilled over. "What if something happens to Elena?" Luca's voice turned absolute. "It won't. Because I will burn this entire world to the ground before I let anyone hurt her." Scarlett believed him, because she'd seen what Luca was capable of, had seen the bodies he'd left behind to protect them. And she knew that if it came down to choosing between the world and his daughter, Luca would choose Elena every single time. "Okay?" she whispered. Luca froze. "Okay? Okay. You can be part of our lives, but there are rules. Anything. First, you don't lie to me, ever. I don't care how bad the truth is. I need to know what we're facing. Done. Second, you let me make decisions about Elena's safety. I'm her mother. I get final say." "Agreed." "And third," Scarlett's voice softened, "you don't disappear again, no matter what happens, no matter how dangerous things get. You stay." Luca's eyes burned with intensity. "I'll stay. Promise me." "I promise." Scarlett pulled him closer. Their foreheads touched. And for the first time in 7 years, Scarlett let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could actually make this work. 2 weeks later, Scarlett was discharged from the hospital. Elena had visited every single day, bringing drawings and stories, and an endless stream of questions about when Mama was coming home. Luca had been there too, every day, every hour. He'd barely left Scarlett's side except when the doctors forced him out for medical procedures. And slowly, Scarlett had started to see glimpses of the man she'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. The man who listened when Elena talked about school. The man who made Scarlett laugh even when she was in pain. The man who looked at both of them like they were the only things in the world worth fighting for. Angela had been cleared to return to work, though she'd made Scarlett promise to call her every single day to prove she was still alive. And the threats, the enemies from Luca's past, had finally gone quiet. Dominic Caruso had been the last one, the last person seeking revenge. And with him gone, Luca's past was finally, truly dead. Or so they thought. The day Scarlett was discharged, Luca drove her and Elena back to Manhattan. They couldn't go back to Scarlett's old apartment. It was still a crime scene, and even if it wasn't, Scarlett couldn't imagine living there again after what had happened. Instead, Luca brought them to a penthouse overlooking Central Park, the same penthouse where he'd proposed to her 7 years ago. Scarlett froze when she recognized it. "Luca, I know," he said quietly. "But I kept it, all these years, because I couldn't bring myself to let it go." Scarlett walked through the space slowly. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern furniture, the view of the park stretching out beneath the skyline. Elena ran to the windows, pressing her hands against the glass. "Mama, look how high up we are." Scarlett couldn't speak. Luca stepped beside her. "I want you to move in. Both of you. This place is already secure. The building has private security, bulletproof windows, panic rooms on every floor. It's the safest place in the city." Scarlett's throat tightened. "You want us to live here?" "I want you to have a home, a real home, not a safe house or a motel, somewhere Elena can grow up without being scared." "And you?" Luca hesitated. "I'll stay wherever you want me to stay. I can get a place nearby. Or I can stay here. Whatever makes you comfortable." Scarlett looked at him. At the man who'd given up everything to protect them. At the father who'd missed 7 years and was desperate not to miss another second. "Stay," she said quietly. Luca's eyes widened. "You mean stay here, with us. Be a family." Luca's breath hitched. Then he pulled Scarlett into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair. "Thank you for giving me another chance." Scarlett closed her eyes. She didn't know if this was the right decision. Didn't know if they could actually build a life together after everything that had happened, but she was willing to try. For Elena. For herself. For the family they'd never gotten the chance to be. That night, after Elena had fallen asleep in her new bedroom, Scarlett and Luca sat on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Manhattan stretched out beneath them like stars. Scarlett leaned against Luca's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her. "I have something for you," Luca said quietly. Scarlett looked up. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring, the same engagement ring he'd given her 7 years ago, the one she'd sold to pay for medical school. "How did you—" "I spent 2 years tracking it down, went to every pawn shop, every collector, every auction house in the city, and 3 months ago I finally found it." Scarlett's hands shook as she took the ring. It looked exactly the same. Small diamond, simple band, nothing extravagant, just perfect. "I'm not asking you to marry me," Luca said quietly. "Not yet. I know we have a lot to work through, a lot to rebuild, but I wanted you to have this, as a reminder that I never stopped loving you, and I never will." Scarlett's vision blurred with tears. She slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "I love you too," she whispered. Luca kissed her, soft, gentle, like they had all the time in the world. And for the first time in 7 years, Scarlett let herself believe they actually did. But the peace didn't last. 3 days later, Luca got a phone call that changed everything. Scarlett was in the kitchen making breakfast when she heard him shouting in the other room. She ran to find him. He stood in the middle of the living room, his phone pressed to his ear, his face pale. "What do you mean they're still operational?" he said. "I shut down every division, every operation, every connection." Silence. Then Luca's expression turned murderous. "How long have you known about this?" More silence. "And you didn't think to tell me?" He hung up and hurled the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. Scarlett stepped closer. "Luca, what's wrong?" He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her blood run cold. "My father's empire," he said quietly. "It's not dead." "What?" "There's a faction I didn't know about, operating in Europe. They've been running weapons and trafficking routes for the past 5 years, and they just found out about you and Elena." Scarlett's stomach dropped. "No. They're coming, and they're bringing an army." The world tilted sideways. Scarlett grabbed the counter to steady herself. "When?" she whispered. "Soon. My contact says they're already in the country." "How many?" "Enough." Scarlett's hands curled into fists. She'd known this peace was too good to be true, had known that no matter how many enemies Luca killed, there would always be one more. But she'd let herself hope anyway. And now that hope was turning to ash. "What do we do?" she asked. Luca's voice turned cold. "We fight." "Luca, I'm done running, Scarlett. I'm done letting these people dictate our lives, so we end this, once and for all." "How?" Luca crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "Together," he said simply. Scarlett closed her eyes. She'd spent 7 years trying to protect Elena from Luca's world. But now she understood the truth. The only way to protect Elena was to destroy that world completely. And if that meant standing beside Luca and fighting, then that's exactly what she would do. "Okay," she whispered. "Together." Luca kissed her forehead. Then he pulled out his phone and started making calls. And Scarlett knew that the final battle was coming. The one that would either set them free or destroy them all. The war came to Manhattan on a Tuesday morning. Scarlett woke to the sound of Luca's voice in the hallway, low and urgent, speaking to someone on the phone. She checked the clock. 5:30. Elena was still asleep in her room down the hall. Outside the penthouse windows, the city was just beginning to wake, dawn bleeding pink and gold across the skyline. She found Luca in his office, surrounded by monitors displaying security camera feeds from around the building. 3 of his men stood with him, all armed, all wearing expressions that made Scarlett's stomach twist. "How many?" Luca asked into the phone. A pause. Then his jaw tightened. "When?" Another pause. "Understood. Keep me updated." He hung up and turned to find Scarlett standing in the doorway. "They're here," he said quietly. 12 armed men. They hit one of my warehouses in Brooklyn an hour ago, killed everyone inside, left a message on the wall." Scarlett didn't want to ask, but she had to. "What did it say?" We're coming for your family. The words hit like a physical blow. Scarlett's hands curled into fists. We need to get Elena out of the city. Already arranged. I have a team standing by to take her to a secure location upstate. She'll be protected by the best people I have. I'm going with her. No. Luca? You're staying here. With me. Scarlett's voice rose. Like hell I am. My daughter needs me. Your daughter needs you alive. And the only way to guarantee that is to end this today. Luca crossed the room and gripped her shoulders. These people aren't going to stop, Scarlett. They're not going to negotiate or disappear or give up. The only way this ends is if we kill every single one of them. Then let's do that and get Elena out first. We can't. They're already watching the building. The moment we try to move her, they'll attack. The only chance we have is to draw them here, on our terms, where we control the environment. Scarlett's throat tightened. You want to use Elena as bait. No, I want to use us as bait. Elena will be in the panic room. She won't even know what's happening, but they think she's here, which means they'll come. And when they do, we'll be ready. Scarlett stared at him. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to grab Elena and run, but she'd tried running, and it had almost gotten them all killed. Okay, she whispered. What do you need me to do? Luca's expression softened. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Scarlett nodded, even though trust felt like the hardest thing in the world right now. Luca turned to his men. Get the building locked down. I want eyes on every entrance, every exit, every possible breach point, and get Dr. Chen on the phone. Tell her to come here immediately. One of the men nodded and left. Scarlett frowned. Why Angela? Because if this goes bad, we're going to need a surgeon, and she's the only one I trust. The weight of those words settled over Scarlett like lead. This wasn't just a fight. This was a last stand. Angela arrived 40 minutes later carrying a medical bag and wearing an expression that said she already knew exactly how insane this plan was. You're using the penthouse as a kill box, she said the moment she walked through the door. Luca nodded. Yes. And you want me here in case someone gets shot? Yes. You're both out of your minds. Scarlett stepped forward. Angela, you don't have to do this. You can leave right now. No one would blame you. Angela set her medical bag down on the counter. If I leave, who's going to patch you up when you do something stupid? Scarlett's throat tightened. Thank you. Angela just shook her head. Don't thank me yet. Wait until we all survive this. Luca handed Angela a bulletproof vest. Put this on, and stay in the panic room with Elena. No matter what you hear out here, you don't open that door unless I tell you it's safe. Angela took the vest. What about you two? We'll be fine. That's not an answer. Luca's voice turned hard. It's the only answer I have. Angela looked at Scarlett. Scarlett forced a smile. We'll be fine. Another lie. But Angela didn't call her on it. She just put on the vest and went to wake Elena. Elena didn't understand what was happening. Scarlett could see it in her daughter's eyes as she explained that they were going to play a game today, a game where Elena had to stay in a special room with Aunt Angela and be very, very quiet. Why? Elena asked. Because it's important. But I don't want to play that game. I want to stay with you and Luca. Scarlett's chest cracked open. She knelt down so she was eye level with her daughter. I know, baby, but sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do because they keep us safe. Are you going to be safe? Scarlett's voice caught. Yes. Promise? I promise. Another lie. But Elena smiled, and that was all that mattered. Scarlett hugged her daughter so tight she thought her ribs might break. I love you, Elena, more than anything in the world. I love you too, Mama. Then Angela led Elena toward the panic room, and Scarlett watched them disappear behind the reinforced steel door. The lock clicked into place. And Scarlett was alone with Luca and his men, and the knowledge that in the next few hours, people were going to die. Maybe even her. Luca's hand found hers. You ready? Scarlett looked at him, at the man she'd loved and lost and found again, at the father who'd missed 7 years but was willing to die to make up for them. No, she said honestly, but let's do it anyway. Luca almost smiled. Then the building's security system started screaming. They came through the lobby. 12 armed men wearing tactical gear and carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in a war zone. Luca's security team tried to stop them on the ground floor, but the attackers cut through them like they were nothing. Scarlett watched it happen on the monitors in Luca's office. Watched Luca's people die. Watched the attackers move toward the elevators with brutal efficiency. "They're coming," one of Luca's men said unnecessarily. Luca was already moving. He handed Scarlett a gun. "Do you know how to use this?" "I'm a surgeon, not a soldier." That wasn't the question. Scarlett took the gun. Her hands shook. She'd never held a weapon before, never wanted to. But now, with armed men coming to kill everyone she loved, she didn't have a choice. "Point and shoot," Luca said. "Don't think. Just react." Scarlett nodded. Luca positioned his men throughout the penthouse, 2 by the elevator, 2 covering the emergency stairwell, 1 watching the windows in case they tried to rappel down from the roof. Then he pulled Scarlett behind the kitchen island. "Stay low. Stay quiet. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments." "Luca, promise me, Scarlett." She looked into his eyes, and she saw fear there. Real fear. Not for himself, for her. "I promise," she whispered. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open, and all hell broke loose. Gunfire exploded through the penthouse. Bullets tore through walls, shattered windows, ripped apart furniture. Luca's men returned fire. 2 of the attackers went down immediately, but there were 10 more, and they moved like professionals, spreading out, using cover, coordinating their assault with hand signals and brutal precision. Scarlett pressed herself against the kitchen island, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The gun in her hand felt impossibly heavy. One of Luca's men screamed. Scarlett looked up just in time to see him collapse, blood spreading across his chest. Then another. And another. Within 30 seconds, all of Luca's security team were down, and it was just Scarlett and Luca against 10 armed killers. Luca grabbed Scarlett's hand. "Move! Now!" They ran. Across the living room, down the hallway, bullets chasing them every step. Luca shoved Scarlett into the master bedroom and slammed the door. He dragged a heavy dresser in front of it. "That won't hold them," Scarlett said. "I know, but it'll buy us time." "Time for what?" Luca pulled out his phone and made a call. "Now," Scarlett frowned. "What are you—" The entire building shook. An explosion somewhere below them. Then another, and another. The floor trembled. Alarms screamed. Luca grabbed Scarlett and pulled her toward the window. "I rigged the lower floors with charges. The building's coming down." Scarlett's stomach dropped. "What?" "Luca, Elena's in the panic room. The panic room is reinforced. It'll hold. But we need to get out of here before this whole place collapses." He opened the window. Outside, a helicopter hovered 20 feet away, a rope ladder dangling from its side. "You're insane," Scarlett whispered. "You have a better idea?" The bedroom door exploded inward. The dresser splintered. Armed men poured through. Luca grabbed Scarlett and shoved her toward the window. "Climb!" "What about you?" "I'm right behind you. Go!" Scarlett didn't think. Just grabbed the rope ladder and started climbing. The wind tore at her clothes. The ladder swung wildly. Below her, Manhattan stretched out in dizzying vertigo. Gunfire erupted behind her. She looked back. Luca was at the window, firing at the men trying to follow. Then he holstered his gun and grabbed the ladder. Started climbing. One of the attackers appeared at the window, raised his weapon, aimed at Luca's back. Scarlett didn't hesitate. She pulled the gun from her waistband, aimed, and fired. The shot went wide. She fired again. This time, the attacker jerked backward and disappeared from the window. Scarlett stared at her hands. She'd just killed someone. She'd actually killed someone. Luca reached her. "Good shot." Scarlett couldn't answer. She just kept climbing until strong hands grabbed her and pulled her into the helicopter. Luca followed seconds later. The pilot banked hard, pulling away from the building just as another series of explosions tore through the lower floors. The penthouse tilted, glass shattered, steel groaned, and then the entire top half of the building started to collapse. Scarlett watched in horror as her home, the place where she'd finally started to believe they could build a life together, crumbled into dust and debris. "Elena," she whispered. Luca grabbed her hand. The panic room is in the sub-basement. It's designed to survive a building collapse. She's safe. You don't know that. Yes, I do. The helicopter circled the wreckage. Emergency vehicles were already screaming toward the scene. Firefighters, police, ambulances. And somewhere in the rubble below, Scarlett's daughter was trapped. We have to go back, Scarlett said. We can't. Not yet. The authorities will dig through the debris. They'll find the panic room. And if they don't? Luca's jaw tightened. They will. Scarlett closed her eyes. She'd trusted Luca, had let him convince her that this plan would work. And now Elena was buried beneath tons of concrete and steel, and there was nothing Scarlett could do except wait. The helicopter landed on a rooftop 3 blocks away. Another team of Luca's men was waiting with vehicles. Luca helped Scarlett out of the helicopter. She stumbled. Her legs wouldn't hold her. Everything that had just happened crashed over her at once. The gunfight, the explosion, the building collapse, the fact that she'd killed someone. She fell to her knees and vomited. Luca knelt beside her, one hand on her back. Breathe, he said quietly. Just breathe. Scarlett couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she could see was Elena's face. All she could hear was her daughter's voice asking if Mama was going to be safe. And Scarlett had promised, had lied, because she wasn't safe. None of them were safe. I need to go back, Scarlett whispered. I need to find her. We will, but first we need to make sure there aren't more of them waiting. I don't care about them. I care about Elena, Scarlett's voice cracked. Luca pulled her against his chest and held her while she fell apart. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Scarlett let herself cry. It took 4 hours for the emergency crews to reach the panic room. 4 hours of Scarlett pacing back and forth in a safe house across the city, watching news coverage of the building collapse, listening to reporters speculate about what had happened. Terrorist attack, gas explosion, structural failure. None of them came close to the truth. Luca stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, getting updates from his people on the ground. Finally, his expression changed. They found it, he said. The panic room. They're cutting through the door now. Scarlett's heart stopped. Is she alive? They don't know yet. I need to be there. Scarlett, I need to be there. Luca nodded slowly. Within 15 minutes, they were in a car speeding toward the collapse site. Police had cordoned off the entire block. News crews crowded behind the barriers. Luca's driver pulled up to a side street, and one of Luca's contacts, a fire captain named Rodriguez, who apparently owed Luca a favor, met them at the barricade. The room held, Rodriguez said, structurally sound, but we had to cut through 3 feet of reinforced steel to get the door open. Are they alive? Scarlett demanded. Rodriguez nodded. Yeah, shaken up, but alive. Relief hit Scarlett so hard she almost collapsed. Rodriguez led them through the debris field. Rescue workers swarmed the area, searching for survivors, clearing rubble, documenting damage. And there, sitting on the back of an ambulance wrapped in a thermal blanket, was Elena. Angela sat beside her, one arm around Elena's shoulders. The moment Elena saw Scarlett, she burst into tears. Mama! Scarlett ran. She grabbed Elena and pulled her into her arms and held her so tight she thought she might never let go. You're okay, Scarlett whispered. You're okay. You're safe. Elena sobbed against her chest. I was so scared. The building was shaking and there were loud noises, and Aunt Angela said everything was fine, but I didn't believe her. It's over now, baby. It's all over. Scarlett looked up at Angela. Angela's face was pale, but she smiled. Told you we'd survive. Scarlett laughed through her tears. Luca stood a few feet away, watching them. Elena pulled back from Scarlett and looked at him. Luca? He stepped closer. Yeah? Were you scared too? Luca's throat worked. Terrified. Elena reached for his hand. And when she did, something in Luca's expression shattered. He knelt down beside her and wrapped his arms around both Elena and Scarlett. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Scarlett felt like they might actually be okay. The investigation took weeks. Police wanted to know what had caused the building to collapse. Fire marshals wanted to know if there had been explosives involved. Federal agents wanted to know if it was terrorism. Luca handled all of it. He had lawyers, contacts, people who could make evidence disappear and questions go away. The official story became a gas leak that triggered a catastrophic structural failure. Tragic, but accidental. No one mentioned the armed men who died in the collapse. No one mentioned the bodies that Luca's people had quietly removed before the authorities arrived. And no one mentioned the war that had been fought inside that building. Scarlett and Elena moved into a different safe house while Luca dealt with the aftermath. This one was smaller, quieter, surrounded by trees instead of skyscrapers. Elena seemed to like it. She spent her days drawing pictures and playing in the yard and asking when they could go home. Scarlett didn't have an answer, because she didn't know where home was anymore. 3 weeks after the collapse, Luca came to the safe house with news. Scarlett was in the kitchen making dinner when she heard the door open. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. "It's done," he said quietly. Scarlett set down the knife she'd been using. "What's done?" "All of it. The European faction, the remaining connections to my father's empire, the people who sent those men after us." He paused. "They're all dead." Scarlett's stomach twisted. "How many? Does it matter?" "Yes." Luca exhaled slowly. 23. The number hung in the air like smoke. 23 people. Dead. Because of them. "Are we safe now?" Scarlett asked. "As safe as we'll ever be." It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was the truth. Luca crossed the room and took her hands. "I know this isn't the life you wanted. I know you thought you were marrying a normal man 7 years ago, someone who could give you a white picket fence and Sunday dinners and a future that didn't involve bodyguards and safe houses and buildings collapsing around you." Scarlett's throat tightened. "Luca, let me finish. I can't be that man. I'll never be that man. My past is always going to follow me. There will always be someone out there who remembers what my father built and wants revenge. But I can promise you this." His voice turned fierce. "I will spend every day of the rest of my life making sure that past doesn't touch you or Elena. I will be the wall between you and the darkness, and I will never, ever let anyone hurt either of you again." Scarlett stared at him, at the man who'd destroyed her life and rebuilt it, at the father who'd missed 7 years but was fighting every day to make up for them, at the person she'd never stopped loving, no matter how hard she tried. "I know," she whispered. Luca's eyes widened. "You know? I know you'll protect us. I know you'll fight for us. I know you'll die for us if that's what it takes." She paused. "But I don't want you to die, Luca. I want you to live. I want you to be there when Elena graduates high school. I want you to walk her down the aisle someday. I want you to meet your grandchildren. And I want to grow old with you without wondering if today's the day someone finally catches up to your past." "I want that too." "Then give me something normal. Just one thing. Something we can hold on to when everything else goes to hell." Luca was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was small, broken, but real. "Marry me," he said. Scarlett's breath caught. "What?" "Marry me. Not because I'm trying to fix the past, not because I owe you, but because I love you. Because I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Because you're the only person who's ever seen the worst parts of me and stayed anyway." Scarlett's vision blurred with tears. "You already proposed to me 7 years ago." "I know, but I'm not that man anymore. And you're not the same woman you were. So I'm asking again. As the people we are now, will you marry me, Scarlett Vale?" Scarlett looked down at the engagement ring still on her finger, the one Luca had spent 2 years tracking down, the one that represented everything they'd lost and everything they'd found again. "Yes," she whispered. Luca pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and for the first time in 7 years, Scarlett felt like they were finally moving forward instead of running from the past. They got married 6 months later, not in a big ceremony with hundreds of guests and photographers and spectacle, just a small gathering in a private chapel overlooking the Hudson River. Angela was there, a few of Luca's most trusted people, and Elena, wearing a white dress and carrying flowers, walking between her parents and holding both their hands. The officiant asked if they took each other for better or worse, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. Scarlett thought about everything they'd survived. The gunfights, the betrayals, the buildings collapsing around them. The years of separation and pain and fear, and she realized that they'd already lived through the worst. Anything that came next would be survivable, because they'd survived together. "I do," she said. Luca's voice was steady. "I do." The officiant pronounced them married, and when Luca kissed her, Elena cheered so loud it echoed through the chapel. What? The reception was small, just dinner and dancing and cake. Elena insisted on dancing with Luca first, standing on his shoes while he waltzed her around the room. Scarlett watched them together, father and daughter. Finally, together. And she thought about the journey that had brought them here, the broken promises, the second chances, the choice to fight for each other instead of running away. Later, when Elena had fallen asleep in a chair with frosting on her face, Scarlett and Luca stood on the balcony overlooking the river. "Do you regret it?" Luca asked quietly. "Regret what?" "Saying yes, marrying me, choosing this life." Scarlett thought about it, about the scars she'd carry forever, about the nightmares that still woke her in the middle of the night, about the fact that their lives would never be truly normal. But then she thought about Elena's laugh, about the way Luca looked at their daughter like she was the most important thing in the world, about the family they'd built from the wreckage of their past. "No," she said honestly. "I don't regret it." Luca pulled her closer. "Even after everything?" "Especially after everything, because everything we survived made us who we are. And I wouldn't change that." Luca rested his forehead against hers. And in that moment, Scarlett understood something she hadn't before. Love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone worth fighting for, someone worth surviving for, someone worth rebuilding your life around after the whole world burned down. And Luca Moretti, for all his flaws and darkness and violent past, was that person for her. Boss. 2 years later, Luca stood in an empty warehouse in Brooklyn. This was the last one, the final piece of his father's empire that still existed. He'd spent the last 24 months dismantling everything else, shutting down operations, severing connections, burning bridges that could never be rebuilt. And now there was just this. One building, one legacy, one last tie to a world he wanted to leave behind forever. He pulled out a lighter, set it to the gasoline he'd spread across the floor, and watched as the flames consumed everything his father had built. When the fire department arrived, all they found was ash. Luca drove home to the house he'd bought in Westchester. Nothing fancy, just a normal house in a normal neighborhood with a yard where Elena could play and neighbors who didn't know anything about his past. Scarlett was in the kitchen when he walked in. She looked up from the pasta she was making. "Did you do it?" "Yeah?" "How do you feel?" Luca thought about it. For years he'd carried the weight of his father's empire. The guilt, the responsibility, the knowledge that everything his father had built was poison. But now it was gone. All of it. And Luca felt lighter than he had in his entire life. "Free," he said finally. Scarlett smiled and crossed the kitchen to kiss him. Outside, Elena played in the yard with a dog they'd adopted last month. Her laughter floated through the open window. And Luca realized that this ordinary moment in an ordinary house with his wife and daughter, was worth more than everything his father had ever built, because his father had ruled through fear and power and violence. But Luca had learned something his father never understood. Real power wasn't about how many people feared you. It was about how many people loved you. And standing in that kitchen with Scarlett's arms around him and Elena's laughter in his ears, Luca knew he'd finally found the only power that mattered. 5 years after that, Scarlett stood in a surgical theater at Metropolitan Crown Hospital, performing the same kind of operation that had brought Luca back into her life. Cardiac surgery, life, or death. The patient on her table was a 15-year-old girl from a family that couldn't afford the procedure. But the Elena Vale Foundation, the charity Luca had created and funded entirely from the liquidated assets of his father's empire, covered the cost. They'd funded over 300 surgeries in the past 5 years, saved over 300 lives, turned blood money into something good. Scarlett tied off the final suture and stepped back. "She's stable," she said. The surgical team relaxed. Another life saved, another family that wouldn't have to bury their daughter. When Scarlett finally left the hospital 12 hours later, she found Luca waiting in the parking garage. He leaned against his car, hands in his pockets, looking exactly like he had the first time she'd met him. Except different, older, scarred, but at peace. "How'd it go?" he asked. "She's going to make it." Luca smiled. "Good." They drove home together. Elena was 17 now, preparing for college applications. Talking about following in Scarlett's footsteps and becoming a surgeon, she had Luca's eyes, Scarlett's determination, and a future free from the darkness that had once threatened to consume them all. That night, after Elena had gone to bed, Scarlett and Luca sat on their back porch watching the stars. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I'd let you die that night?" Scarlett asked quietly. Luca was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Every day. And I'm grateful you didn't. Because everything I have now, you, Elena, this life, it only exists because you chose to save me when you had every reason to let me go." Scarlett leaned against his shoulder. "I couldn't let you go. Even when I hated you, I couldn't." "Why not?" "Because some people are worth fighting for, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when every logical part of your brain tells you to walk away." She paused. "You were worth fighting for, Luca. You still are." Luca kissed the top of her head. And sitting there under the stars with the woman he loved, and the daughter he'd almost never met sleeping safely inside, Luca Moretti finally understood what it meant to be home. Not a place, not a building, not an empire. Just two people who'd survived hell together and chosen to build something beautiful from the ashes. That was home. That was everything. And after years of blood and violence and darkness, Luca had finally found his way back to the light. The end. The story of Luca Moretti and Scarlet Veil didn't end with a fairy tale. There were still hard days, still moments when the past came knocking, still scars that never fully healed, but they faced it together, built a life together, raised their daughter together, and proved that even the most broken people could find redemption if they were willing to fight for it. Because love wasn't about being perfect, it was about being present, about showing up every day and choosing each other even when it was hard, about building something worth protecting. And in the end, that was the only empire that mattered, not one built on fear and power and violence, but one built on love and sacrifice and second chances. The mafia boss who once ruled New York through terror had become a father, a husband, a man who measured his worth not by how many people feared him, but by how fiercely he protected the people he loved. And the surgeon who'd spent 7 years believing she was better off alone had learned that sometimes the greatest risk wasn't opening your heart to someone dangerous. It was closing it off completely and spending the rest of your life wondering what could have been. They'd survived the impossible, lost everything, found it again. And in doing so, they'd discovered something more powerful than any empire: each other. And that was worth more than all the power in the world.